Rose had always been a dreamer, craving independence and adventure far beyond her small-town upbringing. Her parents envisioned a simple life for her: school, marriage, settling down locally. But Rose wanted excitement and a career. In high school, she met Charlie, a charming, free spirit who matched her rebellious streak. The summer after graduation, they had a whirlwind romance, exploring the countryside and sharing passionate moments. One night, they lay together on a quilt in his uncle's barn, bathed in moonlight. By autumn, they parted ways. Charlie went to a state university for agribusiness, while Rose headed 3 states away for college on an accounting scholarship. They briefly reconnected during the first summer break, but her internships kept her busy, and she eventually returned home to work at a local bank. By then, their lives rarely intersected. Years later, Charlie sold his family's farms and invested in retail, tripling the income the farms would have provided. Rose, assigned as his bank coordinator, reconnected with him. Working lunches turned into dinners, and soon they were in a relationship. 18 months later, they married in a simple country church. After their honeymoon, Charlie gave Rose the seed money to start her own business, with his stores as her first clients. A post-nuptial agreement ensured he had no claim to her profits. Over time, Rose built a thriving enterprise with 8 offices across 2 states, while Charlie expanded his retail chain to 4 stores. They became well off but remained down to earth in their community. Their 4-bedroom house stayed an empty nest. Complications during their daughter's birth left Rose unable to have more children. They poured their love into Faith, now a college graduate. Rose indulged in annual shopping trips, a tradition shared by her mother and daughter. One Thursday evening, Rose came home to find takeout still in its boxes. Charlie was on the patio, staring at the sunset. She grabbed plates and joined him, noticing his uncharacteristic silence and how he turned away when she tried to kiss him. "How was your day?" she asked cautiously. Without looking at her, he replied, "Pretty boring this morning, but I had an interesting lunch date." Rose, thinking he might have encountered someone who annoyed him, smiled. "Was it a pretty young thing or some grumpy old man?" "Quite attractive, actually. Amanda Peterson," he answered calmly. A chill ran down Rose's spine. "What did you talk about?" she asked. "Zex," he said bluntly. "Why would a 24-year-old woman talk to you about Zex?" she asked, heart racing. "She and Bobby planned to have an open marriage. She wanted me to be her first, since you were supposed to be his," Charlie replied. "She thought I'd be gentle." By the end of our conversation, she was no longer scared, just angry. "You might want to warn Bobby. A lawsuit is coming, and prepare yourself. This state still allows alienation of affection claims. Now, look me in the eye and tell me none of what she said is true. If even a bit is, we're done." Stunned and speechless, Rose struggled for words. Charlie watched her for a moment before turning away. "I thought so. I'm leaving. I'll stay at the farm. Don't try to contact me. We'll talk when I'm ready." He drove off, leaving Rose frozen, plates untouched. As night fell, she finally stood, went to the liquor cabinet, and poured herself a drink. "Good night, Charlie," she muttered, before breaking down in tears and drinking until she passed out. The next morning, the housekeeper woke her. "Rose, are you all right?" she asked, eyeing the untouched food and the half-empty vodka bottle. Rose managed a weak smile. "Sorry, Shirley, got carried away last night. I can't believe Charlie left you out here like this," Shirley grumbled. "Charlie wasn't here," Rose replied. "I just had a lot on my mind." Shirley noticed the 2 plates and glasses, but didn't press further. Rose called her assistant to rearrange her schedule, then took a long shower. As she brushed her hair, she reflected on how her life had spiraled to this point. Rose had thrived in business. Using Charlie's seed money, she opened her first office and quickly gained his business. Within 12 years, she expanded to 8 offices, but limited her growth to avoid extended time away from home. Living in a dry county, socializing over drinks was rare, a far cry from her lively college days. It had been 10 weeks since she and Charlie had been physically engaged, first due to his flu, then travel, business, and more illness. Normally, their Zex life was vibrant 2 to 5 times a week, sometimes in adventurous places like the hayloft. The long, dry spell left Rose restless. On a trip to a new office in a larger town, she treated herself to a night out. The booze and atmosphere led her to a fling with a dancer, something she regretted the next morning. If Charlie ever found out, she thought, and threw herself into her marriage with renewed passion, trying to hide her guilt. However, the thrill of the affair hooked her. On her next trip, she went back to the same club and dancer. This fling lasted 3 months, with Rose showering him with gifts. When it ended, another affair followed, despite her promises to stop. Then came Bobby Peterson, her new assistant. Flirtation quickly turned into an affair. Rose saw Bobby as a temporary distraction, never a real match for Charlie. But things spiraled when Bobby's wife, Amanda, discovered their affair. Rose naively trusted Bobby to handle it, not realizing how badly it would end. Amanda's confrontation with Charlie set off a chain of events that shattered Rose's world. Back at the farm, Charlie stood looking at the old farmhouse on the ridge. Years ago, he had restored it, adding modern upgrades. Back then, Rose was too absorbed in her business to pay much attention to his projects. This summed up their relationship. She focused only on things that directly involved her. They had once planned to live on the farm, but built a new home instead when they decided to have a family. After Faith's birth complications, Rose refused to discuss adoption, and Charlie let the idea go. Faith became his world while Rose buried herself in work. To keep Faith close, Charlie built a daycare center next to his store. It became known as the Bartonians, a program that shaped kids into high achievers. Soon, other stores replicated it. It wasn't just a charitable move. It was a way to keep Faith nearby and happy. Charlie reflected on it all, wondering how things had come to this. Charlie arrived at the farm, opened the windows, and unpacked the groceries. Though he wasn't a drinker, he'd brought a 12-pack. He made coffee and took it to the porch swing, where he and Rose had shared many memories. Reflecting on their marriage, he wondered if there had been any warning signs. He recalled her vague smiles about pleasant memories. Was she thinking of her lovers? His phone interrupted his thoughts. Almost ignoring it, he glanced at the number. "Hello?" he answered. Sobs filled the line before a voice choked out, "He punched me." "Amanda?" he asked, switching to his CEO tone. "Who punched you?" "My husband. I told him about our lunch and that I was leaving him. He punched me. What do I do?" "Are you out of the house?" "Yes," she sobbed. "Go to the hospital. I'll be there soon. Go now if you want my help." Hanging up, Charlie called the sheriff's department. At the hospital, Amanda rushed to him, her face swollen and bruised. He sat for 40 minutes until the deputy returned. "Her cheekbone's broken," the deputy reported. "She wants to talk to you before pressing charges." "What happened, Charlie?" He gave a brief explanation. "I had lunch with her. She needed advice. Her husband's trying to drag her into swinging, and I guess he didn't like what I told her." Carla Martinez, the deputy, laughed. "Open relationships? Here." "Sometimes you don't really know people," Charlie replied, his face strained. "Let's go talk to her." In the room, Amanda looked up, pale and medicated. "What do I do?" "First, press charges. If you don't, I'm done helping. Has he touched you before?" She hesitated, then nodded. "He's slapped me a few times." "Carla, did you hear that? Go arrest him." "I can't," Carla replied. "She has to give a statement and agree to press charges." Charlie turned to Amanda. "You need to be honest. Your safety matters." He left so she could give her statement. 45 minutes later, Carla returned. "It's just a domestic disturbance for now. She's staying overnight. Afterward, we'll find a shelter, unless she has other plans." Charlie checked on Amanda, found her asleep, then headed home exhausted. The next morning, he woke disoriented, remembering where he was. After showering, he called his assistant to take the day off. Reflecting on the previous day, he grimaced. "So, my wife's a serial cheater. Her lover tried to push his wife into an open relationship. She refused. He slapped her, and now she's in the hospital while he's in jail. And my wife doesn't care enough to know any of this." Stopping at the diner for breakfast, he soon noticed Officer Martinez finishing her shift. She greeted him with a kiss on the cheek, making him blush. She joined him, ordered steak and eggs, and filled him in. "We arrested him. He cussed us out, ranting about Amanda, Rose, and you. He was processed, and his dad's lawyers will probably show up soon. Amanda needs a place to go. Can you help?" "Not directly. Follow me to my office." He went in, surprising his assistant. Opening the safe, he grabbed $3,000, handed it to Carla, and said, "Get her an apartment and cover a month's expenses. Keep quiet about where it came from." Carla followed through. 18 months later, at her wedding, Charlie walked her down the aisle and paid for everything. Meanwhile, Amanda was safe, and Charlie left town to visit his farthest store. Back home, Rose waited for contact. After 2 weeks, she tried calling his cell and emailing him. No response. She felt lost, gained weight, and decided to return to the gym. One of her former lovers, a trainer, pulled her aside, and she confessed everything. "What did you expect?" he asked. "You weren't discreet. Why do you want him back?" "I love him," she pleaded. "Then get yourself together. Work out, and I'll call Gabriel to fix your hair. You've got some gray showing." She managed a small smile. Dinner tonight? Not a chance. I'm married. Plus, your husband's not someone to cross. As she worked out, Rose realized he was right. She needed to warn her past lovers. Charlie sat on his farmhouse porch as rumors spread. The sheriff, Andy, stopped by for coffee. After some small talk, he addressed the situation. People are talking. Rose looks terrible. This is about Amanda Peterson and her husband, right? He's in jail and Amanda's filed for divorce. So, what's going on? Charlie told him the story, omitting some details. Amanda opened my eyes. So yes, I'm covering her divorce costs. We've never been more than friends. Driving away, Andy reflected. He'd never imagined Rose cheating. This would hit Faith hard, as she'd always sided with Charlie. Andy hoped it wouldn't become a public mess. Rose was stunned when she received Charlie's email. She feared he might never contact her again. The email was blunt. Why? She replied with a long message, expressing love and pleading to meet. His response was a single word. Why? This continued until he agreed to meet if she answered his question. After several drafts and help from a counselor, she sent her response. Charlie, this is the hardest thing I've ever written. I have no justification. I've seen a counselor, but in the end, I did it because I could. I never flaunted it, knowing how much it would hurt you. You could destroy me, but you won't because you're a good man. I never stopped loving you. Even during my mistakes, I wanted to come home to you. I would do anything to make this right. Please don't ask for details. It doesn't change the outcome. I love you, Charlie. Always. Rose. He read it 4 times, growing angrier. She did it because she could. Claims to still love me? Unbelievable. The line about whether it was 1 or 100 confirmed there were many affairs. That was all he needed to know. Charlie quietly left town and traveled to one of the cities where Rose had an office. Through his lawyer, he hired 2 of the top 3 private investigation firms in the area, just in case one found more than the other. He did the same in each of her office locations, paying well and offering bonuses for quick results. I want every detail. If you suspect anyone had an affair with my wife, dig as deep as needed, he instructed. The 2 firm owners later discussed his request. What's he really after? One asked. He's a man in pain trying to understand why she cheated, the other replied. I looked into him. No violent history, respected by most except those who crossed him. His kindness is well known. They agreed to proceed, but decided to keep an eye out for any signs he might act irrationally. Meanwhile, Bobby Peterson woke up in jail, stunned at how everything had collapsed. What began as harmless flirting with Rose had escalated into an affair. Bobby saw it as a chance to replace her husband and gain access to her wealth, imagining it would earn him his father's respect. Rose had suggested making him her assistant to ease her workload, and he viewed it as his ticket to power and control. However, things spiraled when his wife became suspicious. She eventually found their emails, and Bobby tried to convince her that he was only playing along for their benefit. Over time, he persuaded her to consider finding a sugar daddy to boost their income, claiming they could use it to start their own business. To his shock, his wife targeted Charlie Barton. When she approached Charlie, the plan unraveled. She confessed everything, including Rose's intention to take Bobby on an upcoming trip. That night, she told Bobby about the conversation with Charlie, and that she was leaving. They argued while Bobby drank, his world crumbling. Knowing he was finished, he struck her in a moment of rage to silence her. When she left, he sank into despair, considering how he might salvage his situation. Maybe I can ask Charlie for hush money, he thought. A couple of hours later, pounding on his door woke him up. Damn it, Amanda! Go away before I... He stopped when he saw 2 officers. Robert Peterson? Yeah, what do you want? It's the middle of the night. He barely finished before he was on the ground, handcuffed. Robert Peterson, you're under arrest for attacking Amanda Peterson, the female officer began, but he tuned out. He couldn't believe Amanda had reported him. It was just a tap, he yelled as they pulled him up. Barton must have put her up to this. Mr. Peterson, the officer cut him off. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you. Her tone made him shut up. He stayed silent through processing, fuming when he learned he wouldn't get bail for 48 hours due to domestic violence laws. The next morning, he called his father, swallowing his pride. His father laughed but agreed to help if Bobby paid him back. By the time Bobby was released, Amanda had cleared out their apartment and disappeared. Her lawyer was waiting to serve him divorce papers. Amanda went on medical leave, and nobody at her job would give Bobby any information. His lawyer warned he was facing jail unless Amanda dropped the charges. Days later, Bobby saw Charlie at a diner, surrounded by doting waitresses. Bobby flagged down his own waitress and asked, What do I have to do to get that kind of service? Letting his hand rest on her arm, she pulled away, glaring. For starters, don't be a wife knocker, she replied loudly, drawing laughter. Just as Bobby was about to retort, the owner approached. Enjoying your burger, Bobby? Yeah, it's great, thanks, he replied, relieved at the friendly face. Glad to hear it, she said, still smiling, because it's the last meal you'll have here. You're banned as long as I own this place. More laughter filled the diner. Bobby fumed, then noticed Charlie watching him with a smirk. Rage surged, but before he could act, 2 female cops entered, greeted Charlie with kisses on the cheek, and caused more laughter. When Charlie left, he covered their checks and left a generous tip. Bobby ate slowly, leaving no tip out of spite. Stepping outside, he found a yellow boot on his car and a $138 parking ticket for being too close to a hydrant. Fuming, he walked back to the office, surprised he hadn't been fired. For 2 weeks, things seemed normal, but then whispers started and people avoided him. Bobby, a manipulative sociopath, blamed everyone else. However, he soon formed a new plan: target Faith. She had flirted with him during college breaks, and if he could win her over, it would be the ultimate revenge against Charlie. Faith had rejected many suitors, focused on building her veterinary practice. When the older vet in town was forced to close due to declining abilities, Faith took over, offering mobile services to local farms. Her business thrived within 2 years, but she resisted expanding, preferring hands-on work. Charlie and Rose were proud of her, though Charlie occasionally hinted at wanting grandchildren. Faith assured him she'd let him know when the time was right. Sometimes, she and her single friends went out to let off steam, often under the watchful eye of Carla and Vicky, both law enforcement officers. Once, Carla caught a man trying to pill Faith's drink, strike him up, and had him arrested. Charlie's influence ensured the man took a plea deal and served time. After enduring prison strikings, he left town upon release. Bobby brought in a cat, surprising Faith with how it responded to him. "Pet's name?" she asked. "Lady Grey," he replied, blushing. "She looks regal, don't you think?" Faith filled out the paperwork, reminding him to provide food, water, and regular checkups. Bobby tried small talk, but Faith cut him off, citing a busy schedule. Frustrated, he left, then decided to let Lady Grey loose near the clinic, hoping she'd return and give him an excuse to come back. For a moment, he regretted it, but brushed it off. Faith found Lady Grey and brought her inside. Later, she called her mother. "We're having dinner tomorrow at China House, 7 sharp, she said. "We need to talk. If you dodge my questions, we're done. If you don't show up, that says it all." Then she hung up. That night, Faith brought Lady Grey home. By morning, the cat had settled in. At the clinic, Lady Grey roamed freely, even sharing Faith's lunch. When Bobby called about the cat, Faith agreed he could pick her up, but asked her assistant, Nancy, to stay close when he arrived, sensing something was off. Bobby arrived at the clinic high. Recently, he had helped a college friend hide money through shell companies and offshore accounts, unaware he was aiding a mid-level pill dealer. This friend introduced him to pills, and Bobby liked the sharp focus they gave him, using them occasionally. The fallout had begun. Although he wasn't fired, it was clear he and Rose could no longer work together. He was transferred to another location she rarely visited, but Rose smoothed things over by promoting him to office manager with a pay raise. "I'm doing what I can for both of us, Bobby. I can't stay in touch if I want any chance of reconciling with my husband. We both messed up, so if you're thinking of legal action, reconsider. Amanda gave Charlie all our emails. I could spin this as a midlife crisis where you seduced me for money. We'd all lose, but you'd lose the most. Take the promotion, work for a while, and I'll give you a glowing recommendation and severance package when you move on." Feeling trapped, Bobby agreed to the transfer. In his mind, everything was still on track. He planned to catch Faith later and charm her. "She'll be on her knees doing whatever I want," he thought. For extra confidence, he did a quick line of pills before heading to the clinic. Faith let him in, holding Lady Grey the cat in her arms. Nancy, one of the assistants, watched nearby. "Looks like you made a friend," Bobby said. "You were always lovable." Nancy giggled at his lame attempt. Faith gave him a cold smile. "Let's get this straight, Bobby. I've always thought you were a sleaze, even at 18. Now, knowing what you and my mother planned, you make me sick. Whatever you want, you're not getting it here. Take your cat and leave. Or better yet, leave her with me, and I'll find her a good home." Bobby froze. No woman had ever refused him. "Come on, Faith. Why the hostility? We'd be perfect together, the king and queen of this county." "Let's see," Faith replied sarcastically. "I'd bring looks, money, and status. You, a broke loser on probation. Great future." Bobby was on probation for attacking Amanda, thanks to a good lawyer and a clean record. He had to do community service and attend anger management, which he mocked. He hadn't started his service yet, but hoped Faith might let him do it at the clinic. Angry, he grabbed her arm. She grinned at his hand. "Let go and get out. That's your only warning." In a flash of rage, he slapped her, knocking Lady Grey from her arms. The cat clawed his arm before he threw her against the wall, where she slid down, one leg bent awkwardly. Faith punched him hard, but he dragged her toward the door. "Stupid witch! Now I'll have to train you the hard way," Faith screamed, landing a partial hit to his groin. He punched her in the face, breaking her nose and knocking her out. Nancy had called emergency the moment Bobby grabbed Faith. She rushed out and plunged a tranquilizer dart into Bobby's back. He screamed, turned, and knocked her out with a punch. As he dragged Faith to his car, the first police cruiser blocked the driveway. "Get on the ground now!" Officer Wells commanded, weapon drawn. Bobby tightened his grip on Faith's throat. "Back off or I'll crush her windpipe!" Carla Martinez arrived with her taser ready. "Jimmy, if he moves, drop him!" she ordered. "Stay back," Bobby growled. Carla signaled Jimmy to distract him. "Hey, Bobby," Jimmy called, smirking. "Thanks for being so stupid. Amanda's dating me now. She wanted to try a real man for a change." Bobby turned, enraged, as the tranquilizer took effect. He dropped Faith and slumped. Carla tasered him to be sure. 3 ambulances arrived. One for Faith, one for Nancy, and one for Bobby, who was cuffed to the gurney. Faith had a broken nose, a concussion, and bruises. Nancy suffered a concussion and stayed overnight. Bobby tested positive for pills, and a search of his home revealed pills. He was charged with pill possession, probation violation, attack, aggravated attack, attempted sexual attack, and animal cruelty. His bond was set so high that his father refused to help. Meanwhile, Rose waited for hours at the restaurant, thinking Faith had stood her up. When she finally checked her phone, she heard the messages, including one from Charlie. "Rose, get up and answer the phone. Faith is in the hospital. Your boy toy Bobby attacked her. He didn't get far, the cops stopped it. When you're done with whatever you're doing, get over here." Rose rushed to the hospital. She stood by Faith's bedside, horrified by her bruised face. Tears streaming, she leaned over her daughter. Faith woke up and they cried together before Rose pulled back. "Sorry I missed dinner, Mom," Faith muttered. "It's okay, baby. I'm so sorry. This is my fault," Rose choked out. "No, Mom," Faith said gently, though they both knew it wasn't true. "This was all Bobby. You didn't do this." They talked for 10 minutes until Faith drifted back to sleep. Rose sensed someone and turned to see Charlie. He looked tired and angry. "Please, Charlie, we need to talk," Rose pleaded. He gently removed her hands. "I will, but give me 2 more weeks. I'll email you. For now, stay with Faith tonight. I'll be back in the morning." Wondering why Charlie needed 2 weeks, Rose nodded. He left without another word. Bobby woke up groggy and confused, realizing his hands were cuffed. Everything flooded back and fear gripped him. A noise made him look up. Charlie Barton was sitting beside him, his eyes calm but cold. Bobby felt like he was staring at a carnivore. "Morning, Bobby," Charlie said quietly. 8 to 10 years, that's what you're looking at, according to the DA. Charlie stood, leaning over Bobby. "You fool. First you go after my wife and now my daughter. You thought you could get away with this?" Bobby tried to scream, but Charlie covered his mouth with a towel. "In prison, you'll learn what it's like to be broken. I'll make sure of it. When you get out, everyone will know exactly what you are." He tightened his grip on Bobby's groin, making him pass out from the pain. Charlie felt no remorse as he tossed the towel aside and left, thanking the nurse on his way out. "He's still out," he said. "I'll keep him in my prayers." The nurse thought he was a saint. When Faith woke up, she knew she was in a hospital. She turned and saw her mother beside her. Her heart sank as memories came rushing back. Rose woke up, tears filling her eyes. For the first time in years, they had a deep conversation. "Guess I'm more like Dad than I thought," Faith said quietly. "But why, Mom?" Rose sighed. "I've asked myself that 1,000 times. Therapists say it's a power thing. I thought I could have it all." "So if you hadn't been caught, you'd still be cheating?" Faith snapped. "Why not just get a divorce?" Rose looked horrified. "I didn't want a divorce. I still don't. I want to make things right." "Mom, listen to yourself. Let it go. You got caught and Dad won't forgive you. Move on and have your flings openly. It's over." Their talk ended when the doctor arrived. After Rose left, Charlie entered. Forcing a smile, he said, "You just missed Mom." "I know," he replied. "Are you going to talk to her?" Yes, soon, when I'm ready, he said. Faith hesitated. Please, don't be too harsh. Let her go. You're still young. Find happiness. Charlie didn't respond with joy. Instead, Faith saw a darkness in his eyes that unsettled her, reminding her of a time when she was 7 and had seen a similar look on his face. Juanita's father was a new hire from Costa Rica with a drinking problem. When Faith was young, she sneaked away during playtime to ask her dad if her friends could come over. She saw him and Juan disappear behind a fertilizer building. When she arrived, Juan was unconscious, and her father was rubbing his bruised hands. He slapped Juan awake, whispered something, and Faith quietly ran back to daycare, never telling anyone. Later, her mom noticed his scraped cheek and black eye, but he claimed he dropped some fertilizer bags, and she lectured him about letting employees handle that. Juanita missed daycare for nearly a week. When she returned, she shared that her father had been deported. Her mother and family were also at risk until Charlie intervened, sponsoring them and securing green cards. He hired Juanita's mother at the daycare, where she taught Spanish lessons in the afternoons. After Charlie's visit, Faith reflected on her childhood. Most of her happy memories involved him, while her mom, Rose, faded from her life when she opened her 3rd office. Rose would rush home, give a quick kiss, and retreat to her office, ignoring Faith's attempts to share her day. Charlie became her primary caregiver, consulting with daycare staff, doctors, and even a child psychologist to ensure he met her needs, though Faith didn't learn this until college. He taught her to fish, shoot, and hunt, shaping her into a strong, assertive woman who valued fairness and loyalty. Rose never seemed to grasp this part of their lives. Despite being the princess of their small community, money didn't matter much to Faith. Charlie's influence kept her grounded, and though she occasionally indulged, she always returned to her usual self. After vet school, Charlie took her to a 26-acre field. Handing her the deed, he said, "This is yours. It's enough for a clinic, barn, paddocks, and kennels. I'll provide the funding, but it's up to you from here on out." Faith was deeply touched. He advised her to get a good architect and warned her about the pitfalls of wealth, reminding her that she'd inherit everything when he passed. "Be careful of the leeches and wolves," he said. The clinic cost $800,000 and was paid off. Faith leaned on lawyers for the setup, rarely consulting Charlie. It became profitable within 10 months, and she added more staff after the first year. Although tempted to open another clinic, she chose to be there for her future family. She knew any partner would need to handle her strong personality, but none of the men she had dated met her standards. Meanwhile, 2 private investigators finished 10 weeks of work on Rose's affairs, finding 5 lovers over 6 years. "He's going to flip," said Chuck. "Probably," replied the other. "But this is what he paid for." They met with Charlie, handed over the files, and left, silently noting to watch for any fallout. Back at the farm, Charlie read through the findings. He kept calm until he got to the second most recent lover, then erupted, throwing his coffee cup through the wall. After a moment, he regained control, his face cold and resolute. At the conference table, Rose gripped the edges, knowing her chances were slim but hoping. The lawyers waited outside as Charlie wanted this private. She stood to embrace him, but he moved away. Not a good sign, she thought, but greeted him anyway. "Hi, Charlie, how are you?" "As well as can be expected," he replied. "You went all out today, I appreciate it." "I dressed to please you," she said. "Thanks for the effort," he replied, placing a thick packet on the table. Rose's heart sank. "I asked why, how long, and how many," he began, holding up a slim folder. "This is what you sent." Then he opened a much thicker one. "This is what my investigators found. Shall we compare?" Rose swayed, feeling the finality. "Don't bother. You knew I was lying," she replied. Ignoring her, Charlie continued. "Bob Walton, married, 4 kids, owns an insurance agency. You switched to his coverage after your first encounter." He played a recording of Walton. "I screwed her for her age. Fun, but without the business angle, no way." Rose recoiled. Charlie continued. "I told him I'd open an office next to his if he didn't confess to his wife. He broke down. It was terrible." He looked up coldly. "They're separated now. He's living in his office." He went through the other names. "Another? I got him fired. Moved 400 miles away. Hope you used protection. I got tested 2 months ago, just in case. I'm clear, but some things take longer to show." Rose stayed silent, not mentioning her monthly screenings. She realized Charlie had missed one lover, a brief, drunken hookup. Charlie went on to her trainer. "I liked him. He didn't lie." He played a recording of the trainer admitting, She came on to me. I'm not proud, but I'm going to tell my wife everything. Charlie stopped the recording. He was right. Revenge didn't satisfy me. It's over. He sighed. You've been doing this for so long. I will never trust you again. He slid a packet across the table. Jerry has the paperwork. You keep your business. I keep mine. It's all in the prenup. You get the house. I keep the farm. Faith gets everything now. Rose was stunned. Charlie stood up. We're done. I can't look at a sunset without thinking of that night. Anything to say? Trembling, Rose choked out. I'm sorry, Charlie. I don't understand why I did this. I want a life with you, but I know it's over. I won't fight the divorce. But if in 2 years you're still single, consider dating me again. No, Rose, he said coldly. I won't promise that. I'll think about it when the time comes. Goodbye. He left her crying. The next day, Rose signed the paperwork and called Faith, who spent a week with her. Faith comforted her, but knew Charlie's pain ran deeper. The fairy tale was over. Life moved on. Rose dove into her business, doubling her offices in 6 years. She dated younger men, using them for pleasure. At 61, she married a man nearly 70, rumored to have performance issues, but allowed her discreet affairs. Faith checked on her father occasionally. She was running her own business and met a veterinary supplies salesman, tall, strong, and kind. One day she struggled with a restless stallion when a man gripped the halter, calming the horse. Thanks, she said, extending her hand. Charlie, he introduced, shaking it. But you'd have held on if the halter hadn't broken. Nice to meet you, she smiled. I have rounds to finish. He let go reluctantly. Later, Faith noticed her assistant flirting with him. Here she is, the assistant said. Faith, meet Charlie. He supplies our materials. We've met, he smiled. How about lunch? I'm new here, and I don't know the spots. Surprisingly, she agreed. Give me a few minutes. She noticed his truck. I prefer trucks, more room for samples and paperwork, he explained. At the diner, they parked next to a similar truck. She took his hand, leading him inside. They approached a table where an older man sat with a young, pregnant woman. The woman paused her conversation. Hey, Carla. Just 1 more month to go, Faith greeted, then turned to the older man. Dad, this is Charlie. He supplies most of our materials. She glanced at Charlie. Meet my dad, your future father-in-law. Everyone except Faith looked stunned. Just kidding, she smirked. This is my dad, and this is just a lunch date. From then on, they stayed in constant contact, texting and talking. His next visit led to lunch, dinner, and a long makeout session in his truck. When he returned again, Faith cleared her weekend for him. Their time was passionate, making love all over her house. Late Saturday night, they went to the family farm. Charlie, a light sleeper, heard them arrive. Recognizing Faith's truck, he headed toward the barn. Hearing giggles from the loft, he smiled and went back to bed. The only sign of their visit the next morning was the open hay doors. When word spread that Charlie was single, offers poured in, but he politely declined them. He dated casually while out of town, but nothing serious. 10 months before turning 60, his gate buzzed. Annoyed, he answered, Who is it? It's your cousin Cindy. Open the gate. My car might quit any minute. I don't remember a cousin Cindy. Not by blood, by marriage, Devon's wife. I have kids with me. Are you letting us in or not? He hesitated. Devon had tried to cheat him once, but there were kids involved. He opened the gate, and an old minivan sputtered in. 3 kids rushed out, needing the bathroom. A 13-year-old girl stepped out, looking just like Faith at that age. Cindy followed, scared but determined. I'm at the end of my rope. Devon took the good car, all our money, and disappeared. I pawned my rings for gas. I didn't expect such bad mileage. It took every cent to get here. The youngest fussed, and the 13-year-old asked Charlie if they could have food for the baby. Shocked to learn they hadn't eaten since the previous day's lunch, he led them to the kitchen. I have cheese and crackers. Give them to the kids. Feed the little one some cereal. It'll fill her up. Your mom and I will handle dinner. He had planned to smoke a pork loin, but decided to grill it instead. He found a dozen ears of corn left by a neighbor and grilled them too. Cindy and Faith prepared tea, lemonade, and slaw, while Faith microwaved potatoes. In 45 minutes, dinner was ready. As the kids ate hungrily, Charlie seethed at his cousin for leaving them in this state. After dinner, he went to the barn and called John Goines, the new county sheriff and a retired SBI agent. 10 months before the upcoming election, Charlie had approached Goines asking, Are you running again? I want to, but I'm not sure I'll get enough support. Charlie looked him in the eye. Are you a good man who will uphold the law and not betray a friend? I am, Goins said confidently. I don't want you to be my man, but the county's man. Meet with these campaign planners and then let me know. Goins met with them, saying, This will need a lot of money. It's covered, they replied. Different groups have made large contributions. Why is Charlie doing this? Goins asked. I'm not interested in being his puppet. He just wants you as sheriff. Billboards went up, worrying Sheriff Andy. In the last election, Charlie had backed him, which was crucial. But this time, Charlie stayed silent. As the race tightened, Andy visited Charlie. He saw kids playing and a young woman bringing out tea. She's a bit young for you, isn't she? Andy joked. She's Devin's wife, Charlie replied coldly. He left them. I'm helping them. What do you want, Andy? Goins has momentum. I need your support and some money. Those ads are pricey. Charlie stayed calm. Save your money. Retire when your term ends. You won't hold another public office here. Andy was stunned. Why would you do this? We've been friends forever. One of the investigators Charlie had hired recognized Rose as a frequent guest at high-end hotels, once seen with Andy. The two disappeared for the weekend. Charlie turned off the recording and looked at Andy. You were my best friend, and you still betrayed me. We're done. Only talk to me if it's official. Think about how you'll handle the fallout if this ever gets out. Now leave. Andy left, pale. Cindy came out with more tea. Was the sheriff crying? She asked. Probably dust, Charlie replied, as the youngest child climbed onto his lap. Don't get too close, Charlie. We'll be leaving soon, Cindy said. You keep saying that, but you're still here, he smiled. What are you doing with the housekeeping salary? I know you registered the kids for school using my address. Her temper flared. If I had enough money, we'd leave. You've trapped us, just like Devin did. This struck a nerve. Charlie got up, went inside, and returned with a $5,000 check. On your way to deposit this, stop at the Jeep dealership. Take what they offer. It's covered. Use this money to get settled. Start at the store Monday. It's not much, but enough to get by, and the kids will get free daycare. Can you be out by Friday? Cindy hadn't expected this. She thought rattling him would make him pay more attention. As she considered her response, she noticed her daughter watching. Cindy had named her after Charlie's daughter, hoping for a bright future. Faith and Grace, the youngest, bonded with Charlie. He even took Junior Faith to meet Faith Sr., who suggested calling her Junior to avoid confusion. The nickname stuck. Cindy softened. We don't have to rush, Charlie. No, you're right. I was getting too attached. Better to handle it now. He paused. I promised Hope and the twins we'd go fishing today. I need to get ready. He left, and Cindy put her head in her hands, hearing Faith angrily slamming things in the kitchen. Meanwhile, Charlie took Hope and the twins fishing. They caught plenty, and Faith Sr. invited everyone over for a fry the next day. Seeing her father flinch at his old patio's mention, Faith Sr. pulled him aside. Time to let go of the past, Dad. Bring our new family tomorrow. You'll have plenty to remember. Charlie sighed. Nice thought, but they're moving soon. Cindy deserves someone her age. Faith playfully hit his arm. You're being a fool. They needed rescuing, and so did you. You always wanted a big family. Turning that down? Charlie was stunned. Really? Go clean the fish. Bring everyone tomorrow, including Cindy. Tie her up if you have to, she teased. I've got a surprise for you. On the drive home, he wondered about the surprise as the kids chattered. Once they were home, fed and bathed, Cindy tucked Grace in and went to find Charlie on the porch swing. Can I talk to you? She asked. Devin wasn't a good husband or father. You've shown my kids more love in 6 months than he ever did. I ended up here on your kindness. At first I was ashamed, but I realized not all men are bad. I love you not as a father figure, but as a life partner. I'm 40, you're 59. I don't care about the age difference. I want you. Cindy buried her face in his neck, waiting for his reaction. After a moment, he asked, If that's true, why push to move out? It broke my heart when you gave me that check. I wanted you to ask me to stay. I wanted you to make the first move. He frowned, and she feared she'd lost him. Then he kissed her. You're lucky you're pretty because you sure aren't smart, he teased. Did you ever think of just telling me? I've had feelings for a while, but I thought the age gap was an issue. Look at all the time we wasted. As they kissed on the swing, the kitchen light flicked on. One of the kids was up for a snack. Cindy gave Charlie a quick peck on the forehead. This isn't over, she whispered as she slipped inside. He grinned. It sure isn't, little girl. Little girl? She thought. I'll show him. The next day, the kids watched in shock as Cindy sat on Charlie's lap and kissed him. Hope and Faith understood and decided they'd explain it to the twins later. "Kids, your mom and I need to run into town. Be good for Faith, or no fish fry," Charlie said. They nodded. At the dealership, Charlie told Cindy to pick any new car that fit the family. "I thought I was getting a used one," she said. "Used was for leaving, new is for staying. Understand?" Cindy threw her arms around him. 90 minutes later, she drove back in a new van, thrilled to call it home. Faith saw them and smiled. Her dad could still be trained. The afternoon was perfect. They ate, played, and relaxed. Junior packed an overnight bag for a sleepover, and the boys crashed after their baths. Meanwhile, Charlie and Connie got cozy on the porch swing. "If not for the kids," Charlie started. Connie laughed. "Kids? If this keeps up, you'll always be in my bed. I'd still prefer some privacy." "Unless you know a better spot, we'll have to wait." Charlie glanced at the barn, bathed in moonlight. "Come on," he said, grabbing an old quilt. Connie giggled as they headed to the barn. "Really? The loft? We're sneaking from our kids, not our parents. Now get up that ladder." In the loft, they made love. Meanwhile, Rose felt alone. She made as much money as Charlie, but to him, it was just a way to care for others. Her lovers left her feeling empty, longing for what she lost. She had seen Charlie only 3 times in 4 years. Once, she approached him at a funeral. "Charlie, remember my offer when we parted? Have you thought about it?" He looked pained. "Sorry, Rose. Too much baggage. Have a nice life. We still have our daughter's wedding to plan." Heartbroken, she watched him walk away, regretting everything. One night, Rose dreamed of Charlie in a hayloft. Impulsively, she drove to his property and heard voices in the barn. "I'm not on the pill. I could get pregnant," Connie said. "Then we'll name him Junior," Charlie replied. Rose turned away, dream shattered. 2 years later, she married Freddie. When he proposed, she confessed everything. "I'm impotent, Rose. We'll marry for companionship. You can have affairs if they're discreet," he said. She agreed. When Rose passed at 75, Faith inherited her estate. Charlie Ty married the wealthiest woman in the state. "Does this mean more kids?" he joked. They had 5. At their wedding, Faith had a surprise. "Dad, you'll be a grandparent in 7 months." Charlie was overwhelmed. Tears of joy flowed as his family surrounded him. "Big wedding?" Ty asked. "Yes," Charlie replied, proud of his daughter. "Just so you know, her mom's been planning since she saw the sonogram." 5 weeks later, the church overflowed as they renewed their vows. "Her mother and I do," Charlie said proudly when asked who gave the bride away. Later, Connie rushed in with a strip of paper. "I'm 40 and pregnant," she cried. Charlie kissed her. "We'll love this child like all the others. Deal?" "Of course. Now I have to marry you," she sighed. "Kids, are you ready for this old goat to join our family?" "Yes!" they cheered. "Wait!" Faith interrupted. "It's not official without a ring." Soon, Charlie took the girls to a jewelry store. They picked out a beautiful set. Charlie then turned to the jeweler. "Do you have matching bands for the girls? I'm marrying the whole family." The girls' cheers woke Grace, and a saleswoman helped her choose a tiny ring. Grace admired it on her finger and refused to take it off. With rings in hand, they left the jewelry store and headed to a steakhouse, unaware that the jeweler and his assistant had already spread the news across town. At the restaurant, whispers of excitement spread as an elderly woman approached their table. "Is it true, Charlie?" she asked. "Yes, Mabel, meet my daughters, Faith, Hope, and little Grace. They'll need some lessons. Do you have time for them?" After chatting briefly, they left, knowing they'd soon be the talk of the town. Back home, Connie was on the porch, pretending to be indifferent. "Just because you bought a ring doesn't mean I'll like it," she teased, eyeing the box. "Oh my, it's beautiful." Charlie dropped to one knee. "It's yours if you say yes. Will you marry me, Connie?" "Yes!" she screamed, startling the horses. She jumped into his arms, crying. The girls showed off their rings, making her tear up again. On their wedding day, Grace, the flower girl, wore a satin dress. Faith stood as Connie's matron of honor, while Junior and Hope looked stunning. During the ceremony, after the kiss, Grace tugged on Charlie's pants. "Kiss me too, Daddy." Laughter filled the room as he picked her up, sharing a kiss with both his wife and daughter. Their honeymoon was filled with beachside relaxation and fun activities. When they returned, they promised a family trip before school started. Later, a sonogram revealed they were having a boy. Charlie smirked, earning a playful old goat comment from Connie. They teased each other all the way home. Charlie Jr. was born healthy. Over time, Faith proudly introduced her family. I'm Faith. This is my sister, also Faith. My husband Charlie, my dad Charlie, and my brother Charlie. We're not very creative with names. Faith Sr. had 2 daughters named Rose and Constance, which helped with the confusion. Charlie observed his children growing up. Junior was his closest, working at the clinic before shifting to the hardware business, where she became his chosen successor. Hope took to farming, managing her own crops and livestock by 17, while Grace, now 10, was a piano prodigy. A distant school wanted her to board, but she only agreed to summer visits for now. He knew it was only a matter of time before she made the move. Meanwhile, he set up trust funds for his kids with strict conditions. They had to graduate college to access the funds. If not, they'd have to wait an extra 5 years, holding jobs and living within their means. He apologized to Faith Sr. for using up part of her inheritance, but she brushed it off. "Who am I to deny my siblings their share?" she laughed. Her mother would cover any gaps. Sheriff Andy's downfall came after losing re-election. He worked as a private investigator, but a series of failed marriages and affairs left him disgraced. Ironically, his ex-wife Amanda later married a trustworthy older man, John. Charlie attended her wedding, acknowledging the twists of fate. Charlie died 2 months after his 79th birthday, shortly after seeing his youngest son graduate. Connie passed 15 years later, and Rose, who chose to be cremated, had her ashes scattered in the ocean. His funeral drew a massive crowd, held at the local football stadium. 800 people volunteered to carry the casket, so they used a lottery. His hearse, pulled by Hope's marsh ponies, was led by Sheriff Carla. Unofficial records showed he had funded nearly 1,000 college educations. The ceremony was attended by politicians, law enforcement, teachers, and professionals who owed their success to Charlie. His ruthless side remained a secret, known only to a few who would never be believed. In prison, Bobby Peterson woke up with a throbbing headache. His broken nose was his welcome gift. His sentence was 12 years with no parole, plus 18 months for animal cruelty. Things got worse when he ended up in Rockwell, a notoriously harsh prison. Within hours, his nose was broken again. His new cellmate laid down the rules. Bobby was now his woman. 6 months in, Bobby looked so much like a woman that inmates fought over him. By his 5th year, he had a new daddy, who kept him relatively safe. He was eventually released early for good behavior, with no one waiting for him outside. Oddly, he found his own version of happiness after all he endured. When news of Charlie's end of life reached him, it barely registered. His focus was on soothing his teething adopted child, who coincidentally was named Charlie.